Welcome to Simply Sewing with Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and there are a lot of times in sewing that we need to put a zipper in where there is no seam, and that's called a seamless zipper. Now they can be put in for the front of the garments, back of garments, handbags, pockets, crafts, and hobbies. The whole thing is there's no seam that centers the zipper. So let's put in a seamless zipper. A seamless zipper can go anywhere in the project. Right up and down, a little bit onto the side if it's decorative, right onto the side. The one thing that's in common is there's no seam, and that's why it's called a seamless. So we're going to need the project we're working on and the zipper that we want to use. We will also need an additional piece of fabric, a little bit bigger than that zipper. If your fabric is very strong and there's no stretch to it, you can just use the matching fabric. But if the fabric has a stretch to it, you will need to interface that little extra piece of fabric. And it's always good to get into the habit of interfacing it regardless if it's stretchy or not. I'm using a lightweight fusible interfacing. So I have a little glue on one side and you can feel it because it's bumpy. And then that flat side is the good side. So follow the directions and fuse that interfacing on to the fabric that's just a little bit bigger than that zipper. This piece of fabric will end up being on the back of the fabric. So you can use a matching fabric. I'm going to use a contrasting so you can see the difference. We need to work on this little fabric stay. This piece of fabric needs to be finished on at least the 3 sides. And in this case, I'm just using a pinked edge. You can have a serge stitch, a zigzag stitch, whatever you want. Take that piece of fabric and fold it in half and just give it a finger press. And I want that back piece facing up. Place the fold of the fabric right along the zipper and put a mark right at the bottom of the zipper pull. We do want to have a nice fold along that fabric because we're going to use it for marking. When the fabric is opened up, we need to draw our stitching line on top of this fabric, and in this case it's right on top of the interfacing. Extend this mark. Now mark right along that center fold so it looks like we have a letter T. From here we need to know the size of the teeth of the zipper, and that size will determine the opening of the zipper. And in this case, when I measure that distance, it's a 1/2 inch. That 1/2 inch measurement needs to come into the center. So I need to draw a line 1/4 inch from that center line on one side and on the other. So it will give me a total of a 1/2 inch. And that's going to be the opening to the zipper teeth. I'm using a dark marker, but you can use something a lot lighter. This will be the area where the teeth are going to be seen. So it's important that this opening fits the inside part of that zipper. From here, we're going to place this little stay onto our fabric. However that zipper is going to be placed in your project is where we need to put this. So we're going to have right sides facing. And pin those layers together. We're going to stitch following that outside line. Start up at the top, stitch all the way down, pivoting at that corner, going across and back. This is one time I do like to make my stitches a little bit smaller. So if you work with a 2.5, turn it to a 2. And that way we have small stitches which are going to be good and strong. This area we need to have a little strength, so it's nice to have smaller stitches. So stitch all the way down, pivot at this point, pivot, and then stitch all the way back up. When that seam has been stitched, we need to cut this apart. We get to follow that straight line till we get to about a 1/2 inch along the bottom. So we're going to cut stop, cut to one corner, and then cut to the second corner. So we're going to have this little triangular flap. When you cut, we want to get as close as we can to those corner stitches. Do not trim the threads, just get as close as we can. Interfacing this fabric definitely helps strengthen those corners. We're going to be able to take this fabric and turn it to the back side. Depending on that fabric, we can just finger press that first on one side and then finger press the second side and finger press that bottom. Now it's going to be easier to turn over. If you have some puckering in this corner, it means you have not snipped close enough to that corner. So turn it back and check that snip. Now we can take time, bring this to the iron and press it so that seam is right along that edge. The back should be flat with no puckering, and the same with the front. The zipper fits inside that little opening, and the teeth are going to be exposed along with that little stopper along the bottom. There are a few ways we can attach the zipper on. Base the zipper down and do a row of top stitch all the way around, or we can fold back and stitch the zipper on. However we want to stitch this zipper on, it's nice if we glue that zipper down or baste it down. There are many different glues that you can use, but I like this thin roll of fusible web. It has a glue on one side and paper on the other. And I'm going to glue that onto my zipper. That little thin one is my favorite. And I'm going to iron that right along the very, very edge of that zipper tape. Follow the directions for the fusible web that you are using because they're all slightly different. In this case, I'm going to be able to just peel off that top paper and it leaves a little thin line of glue. Take off both those sides. Now I'm going to be able to bring this to the iron, line it up, lightly press along the edge of the zipper. That glue underneath is going to stick on that back fabric. As you're pressing these layers together, be sure to let this fabric cool. The glue needs some cooling time before it sticks. So just leave it at the iron and let it cool down. Once it's cooled down, that zipper is now stuck onto that fabric, which is going to make it a lot easier for me to work with. You can top stitch around, or you can keep this seamless and stitch from the back side, which means we're going to pull back that top fabric, put the zipper foot on, and stitch right along that stitching line. So we're going to come as close as we can. So we're stitching on that zipper, that back fabric, and that seam allowance. As we are stitching along this edge, we might need to stop and move that zipper pull out of the way to get close to this top area. But when we have both those sides stitched together, when we turn it over, we have that zipper stitched down, and there's no stitching on the front. We need to stitch down this little end. So take that top fabric, pull it out of the way, and you're going to see that little triangle there, and just stitch that triangle down. And be sure not to run over this little bottom stopper. I like to just fold all of my fabric out of the way and just stitch along that point. So on the back, we will have our 2 rows of stitching, and that stitching, that stitch that little point down, that little fabric stay, and when we turn it over, we have that perfect seamless zipper because there are no seams at all. That top now will be finished depending on what you are making. There are so many different places that we can put a seamless zipper in, and there's so many different size zippers that we can use. They're a lot of fun to use as decorations for side pockets, and they're really fun to use in the bottom of a pair of pants. So the hem is going to be along the bottom, and that is going to be able to open up and be a nice decorative piece on the bottom of your pant cuff. And that's all there is to a seamless zipper. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.